Chapter 4. Then the transformation. The small room in the Pokémon Center was dimly lit, the curtains drawn to block out the late afternoon sun. A faint glow from the bedside lamp cast long shadows on the walls, giving the space a muted, almost dramatic atmosphere. Ash stood in the center of the room, gripping the shimmering pink vial like it was a live Voltorb about to explode. His fingers tightened around the glass as he stared at the liquid swirling inside, his reflection faintly distorted in the vial's surface. "So, this is it," Ash muttered, his voice tinged with a mix of nerves and disbelief. He glanced at Brock and Max, who had stationed themselves at opposite ends of the room, like spectators at some kind of bizarre sporting event. Pikachu sat on the bed, its head tilted curiously as it studied the tiny vial. "Pika.co," it chirped, its ears twitching in confusion. "Yep," Max said, a grin spreading across his face like he'd just discovered the best prank in the world. "Time for you to become my sister. This is going to be amazing." "And Max." Brock's voice carried a note of warning, though his raised eyebrow and the faint smirk tugging at his lips betrayed his own amusement. "You're supposed to be encouraging him, not turning this into your personal comedy show." "What?" "I am encouraging him," Max replied innocently, though the mischievous sparkle in his eyes gave him away. He leaned casually against the wall, arms crossed. "I mean, how many people get to say they turned into May? This is history in the making." "You're pioneer, Ash." Ash groaned, rubbing his temple with his free hand. "Thanks for the pep talk, Max. Really inspiring. I feel so much better now." "You'll be fine," Brock said, stepping forward and placing a steadying hand on Ash's shoulder. His voice carried that calm, big brother tone that always seemed to work, even in the most ridiculous situations. "Just take it one step at a time. Literally. You're probably going to have to learn how to walk differently after this." "Not helping, Brock," Ash muttered, though the corner of his mouth twitched in reluctant amusement. Max snickered, unable to resist. "He's right, you know. May's got that whole swishy thing going on when she walks. You're going to have to nail that. Oh, and don't forget the hair flip. That's crucial." Ash shot him a look that could have fried a Magikarp. "If you say one more thing, Max, I swear I'm going to make you drink this." Max's grin widened. "You wouldn't." "Try me," Ash said, though the vial in his hand betrayed his bluff. All right, Brock interrupted, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Let's focus. Ash has enough on his plate without you adding to it." Ash turned his attention back to the vial, his stomach twisting itself into knots. The liquid shimmered hypnotically, its soft pink hue almost soothing, if it weren't for the fact that he was about to drink it and turn himself into May. "This is insane. I'm about to turn into May. May. What if something goes wrong? What if I mess this up? What if..." "Ash." Brock's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts, steady and grounding. "You've got this. May trusts you, and so do we." Ash let out a shaky breath, nodding. "Okay," he said, though his voice wasn't quite as confident as he wanted it to be. His fingers tightened around the vial. "Here goes nothing." He uncorked the vial with a soft pop, and a faint scent wafted into the air. It smelled sweet and floral, like berries mixed with fresh-cut grass. For a moment he just stared at the liquid, the weight of what he was about to do settling heavily on his shoulders. "Any last words?" Max quipped, leaning forward eagerly. "Yeah," Ash said dryly, tilting the vial toward him. "If this goes wrong, I'm haunting you." Max shrugged, unfazed. "Fair enough." Ash hesitated a second longer, then thought of May lying in the hospital bed, her dream slipping further away with every passing day. He couldn't let her down. He tilted the vial back and drank it in one swift gulp. The liquid was warm, almost like honey, with a slightly tangy aftertaste that lingered on his tongue. He swallowed, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Well," he said, his voice tight with anticipation, "now what? Do you feel any different?" Max asked, practically bouncing on the balls of his feet like a kid on Christmas morning. Ash opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a strange warmth began to bloom in his chest. It started small, like the faint glow of an ember, and quickly spread outward, radiating through his arms, legs, and even his fingertips. I think something's happening," Ash said, his voice already sounding slightly higher. Max's eyes widened, and his grin stretched ear to ear. "Oh, this is going to be good." The warmth intensified, not unpleasant but undeniably strange. Ash felt an odd tingling sensation as his body began to shift. His arms and legs grew slimmer, his shoulders narrowed, and his hair tickled the back of his neck as it grew longer. "Whoa," Ash muttered, glancing down at his hands. They were shrinking, his fingers becoming more delicate by the second. "This is so weird." Pikachu tilted its head, letting out a curious peeker, before scampering onto the bed for a better view. Ash's clothes shimmered, the fabric rippling like water before morphing into May's signature orange and blue outfit. His familiar sneakers vanished, replaced by her sneakers and white leggings. Max clapped his hands together, laughing so hard he had to lean against the wall for support. Oh man. Ash, you're rocking that look. This is the best thing I've ever seen." "Ax.Tun." Ash snapped, his voice cracking. Except it wasn't his voice anymore. It was May's, light and cheerful. He clamped a hand over his mouth, eyes wide. "Oh no. It's happening." Brock, who had managed to keep a straight face up until now, finally cracked a smile. "Sounds like it's working perfectly." Ash groaned, running his hands through May's long auburn hair. "This is so weird. I feel shorter. And my hair's in my face. How does May deal with this all the time?" Max doubled over, clutching his sides. "This is the funniest thing I've ever seen. You're even doing the May pout." "I am not pouting," Ash said, his voice rising an octave. "You kind of are," Brock said, smirking. Ash turned to the mirror on the wall, his stomach dropping. Staring back at him was May. Her bright blue eyes blinked in sync with his, her expression mirroring his panic. He raised a hand, and so did she. This is insane," Ash muttered, touching his face. "You look great," Max said, giving him a thumbs up. "Now all you need to do is practice her smile, her wave, and her I'm totally not annoyed by Max's look." Ash glared at him, or at least tried to. Unfortunately, May's face wasn't built for intimidation. Pikachu hopped onto the floor, staring up at Ash with wide eyes. "Pika-Chu. It's still me, buddy," Ash said, crouching down. "Just, in disguise." Pikachu sniffed him, then tilted its head in confusion before letting out a tentative Pika. "Great," Ash muttered, standing up. "Even Pikachu doesn't recognize me." "Don't worry," Brock said, patting him on the back. "You'll get the hang of it. Just remember, you're May now. Own it." Ash sighed, staring at his reflection again. "No pressure, right?" Max grinned. "Oh, tons of pressure. But hey, if you mess up, at least we'll have a good laugh." "Thanks, Max," Ash deadpanned. "Really helpful. No, really helpful." As the warmth faded and his body settled into its new form, Ash took a deep breath. This was it. He was officially May, for better or worse. No turning back now. The warmth spread quickly, washing over Ash like a tidal wave. It wasn't painful, but it was intense, almost like standing too close to a fire on a chilly night. He stumbled back a step, his legs wobbling as he caught himself against the edge of the bed. "Whoa," he muttered, his voice shaky. He glanced down at his hands, which tingled like they'd fallen asleep after being pressed too long under his weight. Slowly, he flexed his fingers, watching them move as if they weren't entirely his. "This feels weird." "Your hands," Max exclaimed, practically bouncing in place as he pointed. "Look at your hands." Ash frowned, holding his hands up in front of his face. His eyes widened as he watched them begin to change right before him. His fingers stretched slightly, growing slimmer and more tapered. The rough calluses he'd earned from years of gripping Pokeballs and sparring with Pikachu seemed to melt away, leaving his palms soft and smooth, almost delicate. "What the?" he started, but his voice cracked halfway through, jumping an octave higher. He slapped a hand over his throat, as if that would somehow fix it. "Your voice is changing too," Brock observed, his arms crossed over his chest, his expression calm and analytical despite the absurdity of the situation. "It's starting to sound like May's." Ash blinked in disbelief, then cautiously spoke again. "It is. Oh man, it really is." His voice was lighter now, softer, and unmistakably feminine. The sound of it sent a shiver down his spine. It was so alien. So, not him. Max, of course, was having the time of his life. "Oh wow, that's perfect," he said, his grin threatening to split his face in half. "You sound exactly like her. Say something May would say." Ash glared at him, though the effect was less intimidating and more adorable. "Not a chance," he snapped, though his new voice made the retort sound more like an awkward protest than a threat. Before he could argue further, another wave of warmth rippled through his body, this one stronger than before. His legs began to tingle, and he gasped as they seemed to shift beneath him. He looked down in alarm as his jeans started to shrink and adjust, clinging tighter to his thighs as they slimmed and reshaped. His calves took on a graceful curve, and his hips widened slightly, throwing off his balance. He stumbled, nearly toppling over before Brock stepped forward and caught him by the arm. "Careful," Brock said, steadying him. "I'm fine," Ash insisted, though the wobble in his knees suggested otherwise. His cheeks burned as he glanced down at his legs. They weren't his anymore. His thighs were thinner, his knees narrower, and his bones felt lighter somehow. "This is so weird," he muttered, trying to adjust to the alien feeling of his new center of gravity. "Look on the bright side," Max said, leaning casually against the wall. "At least you're not tripping over yourself." "Yet." Ash shot him a glare, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. "Max, I swear." But before he could finish the threat, another powerful wave of heat surged through him, this time settling in his torso. His chest tingled, and he froze as he felt the unmistakable sensation of his body reshaping itself again. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no," Ash groaned, his face turning crimson as his shirt stretched slightly to accommodate the new changes. He crossed his arms over his chest instinctively, letting out a strangled noise of indignation. "Oh, come on. This isn't happening." Max's reaction was immediate. He burst into laughter, doubling over and clutching his sides as tears streamed down his face. Oh, my Arceus. This is hilarious. I can't breathe." "Max," Brock said sternly, though the corners of his mouth twitched with barely contained amusement. "You're not helping." Ash's glare burned hotter than a flamethrower. "I'm going to get you for this, Max. I don't know how yet, but it's going to be legendary." Max straightened up just enough to smirk, wiping a tear from the corner of his eye. "Sure you will. As soon as you figure out how to walk in heels." Ash opened his mouth to fire back, but before he could, a new sensation stole his attention. His scalp tingled, and he reached up instinctively as his hair began to grow. He could feel it lengthening, the strands tickling the back of his neck, then his shoulders, and finally the middle of his back. "It's so long," he exclaimed, pulling a few strands forward to inspect them. His dark, spiky hair had lightened to a rich chestnut brown, the same shade as May's. It was soft and silky, cascading over his shoulders in perfect waves. "Looks good on you," Max said with a smirk, his grin as infuriating as ever. Ash ignored him, focusing instead on the strange sensation spreading across his face. His jawline softened, his chin becoming more rounded, and his nose shrank slightly. His cheekbones shifted, becoming higher and more pronounced, and his eyes seemed to grow larger. He touched his face hesitantly, his fingers tracing the unfamiliar contours. "Whoa," Ash breathed, his voice still startlingly feminine. He turned toward the mirror on the wall, his heart pounding in his chest. The reflection staring back at him was May. Her bright blue eyes blinked in perfect sync with his, her expression mirroring his shock. Her auburn hair framed her face, and her familiar orange headband sat perfectly in place. "This is insane," he muttered, watching as May's lips moved in perfect time with his words. "No, this is amazing," Max corrected, stepping up beside him and gesturing dramatically toward the mirror. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you, May Maple, 2.0. Done." Ash turned a glare at him, but the effect was completely ruined by May's soft features. Instead of intimidating, he just looked mildly annoyed. Brock, who had been watching quietly, finally stepped forward, nodding in approval. "It's a perfect match. The potion worked exactly as Professor Birch said it would." "Great," Ash muttered, running a hand through his long hair. "Now I just have to figure out how to survive this without completely embarrassing myself." Max grinned. "Oh, don't worry, Ash. I'll help you by pointing out every little mistake you make." Ash groaned, slumping forward. "Why did I agree to this?" "Because you're a good friend," Brock said with a smirk. "And because this is the funniest thing that's ever happened," Max added, earning another glare from Ash. Pikachu, who had been watching the entire transformation with wide eyes, finally hopped down from the bed. It padded over to Ash, tilting its head as it studied him curiously. "Pika daughter," it said, its ears twitching. "It's me, buddy," Ash said, crouching down. "Still Ash. Just, dressed up as May." Pikachu sniffed him, then tilted its head the other way. After a long moment, it gave him an approving nod. "Pika, doctor." "Now, see," Brock said, smiling. "And Ian, even Pikachu approves." "You're going to be fine, Ash." Ash stood up, taking one last look at his reflection. He still couldn't believe it. He was May, now, at least on the outside. "Fine," he muttered. "But if Max doesn't stop laughing, I'm making him do the next contest in a dress." Max's laughter immediately stopped, and he took a cautious step back. "You wouldn't dare." Ash smirked. "Try me." Ash's transformation was nearly complete, but the strangest part was about to begin. The warmth had finally subsided, leaving him feeling oddly light, like his entire body had been reset. Just as he began to adjust to the unfamiliar sensation of May's features, his clothes shimmered, rippling as if they had a mind of their own. Guys," Ash said nervously, glancing down as his jacket seemed to dissolve into thin air, replaced by May's bright orange sleeveless top. "What's happening to my clothes?" "Well," Max said, leaning against the wall with a grin, "you can't exactly look like May if you're still wearing your clothes, can you?" Ash's jeans began to shrink, the material tightening around his legs before changing color entirely. In seconds they had transformed into May's short blue skirt, complete with the matching blue cycling shorts underneath. His sneakers shimmered and morphed, stretching up toward his calves until they became her black and white boots, with yellow accents. And just as he thought it couldn't get any weirder, His familiar red cap vanished from his head. In its place appeared May's signature red bandana, the white Pokeball emblem sitting proudly in the center. Ash stared down at himself, his jaw dropping. I look just like her, he said, his voice, May's voice, soft with disbelief. He held out his hands, turning them over as if they might somehow betray the illusion. Max burst out laughing, doubling over as he pointed at Ash. Honestly, you look ridiculous. Max, Brock said, though his tone was more amused than scolding. He crossed his arms, giving Ash a once-over. He's not wrong, though. You're a perfect copy of May. Every detail is spot on. Ash's cheeks burned, though it was hard to tell with May's complexion. He turned to glare at Max. Gee, thanks for the encouragement, he muttered, though his tone lacked any real bite. Max smirked, clearly enjoying himself. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Ash. You're rocking the look. Really? With a sigh, Ash took a hesitant step forward, only to pause as his boots clicked against the tiled floor. The unfamiliar sound made him freeze. He glanced down at his feet, tilting his head in confusion. How does she even walk in these things? Gracefully, Max said, his smirk widening. Which, judging by that awkward shuffle you're doing, is more than I can say for you. Ash shot him a look that could have melted ice, though it looked more like a pout coming from May's face. Keep talking, Max, and I'll make you drink the potion next time. Max raised his hands in mock surrender, still grinning. Hey, I'm just saying, you've got a lot to learn if you're going to pull this off. First lesson, walking without looking like you're about to fall over. Max, give him a break, Brock said, though the corner of his mouth twitched with amusement. He's still getting used to it. Ash ignored both of them, his focus shifting to the mirror hanging on the wall. Taking another cautious step forward, he winced at the sound of his boots clicking again. Seriously, how does she make this look so easy? Finally, he reached the mirror and froze. His breath caught in his throat as he stared at his reflection. It wasn't him looking back, it was May. Her bright blue eyes blinked in sync with his, wide with the same disbelief. Her auburn hair framed her face perfectly, the bandana sitting snugly on top. Even the faintest details were flawless. The curve of her smile, the softness of her cheeks, the way her bangs fell just right. This is so weird, Ash muttered, touching his face. His fingers brushed against his cheek, and the reflection mirrored the action perfectly. You look exactly like her, Brock said, stepping up beside him. If I didn't know any better, I'd think May was standing right here. Ash turned to him, his expression a mix of shock and unease. I don't even recognize myself, he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. It's like I'm gone. You're still in there, Brock reassured him, his tone calm. This is just a disguise. You've got this, Ash. Ash turned back to the mirror, his stomach twisting. I don't know, Brock. I mean, what if I mess this up? What if someone figures it out? Max snorted from across the room. Oh, they'll figure it out all right. Probably the second you trip over your own feet trying to do one of May's twirls. Ash clenched his fists, his annoyance finally bubbling to the surface. He spun around to face Max, pointing an accusatory finger at him. If you don't stop laughing, I'm going to make you wear this outfit. Max's grin faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered. Nice try, Ash. But you're the one who volunteered for this, not me. Volunteered isn't the word I'd use, Ash grumbled, crossing his arms. The motion felt strange. His arms were slimmer now, and his shoulders narrower. This is going to be a nightmare. Max leaned back against the wall, his grin returning. Oh, don't worry. We'll help you. And by help I mean we'll laugh at you every time you mess up. Ash groaned, running a hand through his long hair. The silky strands slid between his fingers, unfamiliar and annoying. This hair is going to drive me crazy, he muttered. Welcome to May's world, Max said, clearly enjoying himself. Ash turned back to the mirror, his reflection still throwing him off. He practiced a few facial expressions, smiling, frowning, scowling. But they all looked wrong, like a badly programmed ditto trying to emulate emotions. How does she even do this? He muttered. Brock stepped forward, clapping a hand on Ash's shoulder. You'll figure it out. Just take it one step at a time. Literally. Ash sighed, glancing down at his boots again. Why do they have to be so loud? It's like they're announcing, hey, look at me. I'm wearing ridiculous shoes. Max snickered. Eee. Don't worry, Ash. By the time we're done, you'll be twirling, smiling, and tossing your hair like a pro. Ash raised an eyebrow. Whirling. Max's grin widened. Oh yeah. If you're going to be May, you've got to nail the twirls. And the winks. And the hair flips. Ash groaned again, burying his face in his hands. This is going to be the worst month of my life. Brock chuckled, patting him on the back. You'll survive. Besides, you're doing this for May. She's counting on you. Ash sighed, dropping his hands. He glanced at his reflection one more time, forcing himself to stare at the unfamiliar face. All right, he said finally, squaring his shoulders. Let's get this over with. Max gave him a mock bow. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the new and improved May Maple, Ash Ketchum. Ash rolled his eyes, though he couldn't help the small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. You're lucky I don't have Thunderbolt, or you'd be toast right now. Pikachu, who had been quietly observing the whole scene, hopped down from the bed and padded over to Ash. It tilted its head, studying him curiously. Pika, Totka. Ash crouched down, smiling at his partner. It's still me, buddy, he said softly. I know I look different, but it's just me. Pikachu sniffed him, then tilted its head the other way. After a moment, it gave an approving nod. Pika, it's Ilianin, nil, zei, Antau, Brock said with a smile. Even Pikachu approves. You're going to be fine, Ash. Ash straightened up, glancing at his reflection one last time. He still couldn't believe it. He was May now, for better or worse. No pressure, right? He muttered under his breath. Max's grin widened again. Oh, tons of pressure. But hey, if you mess up, at least it'll be hilarious. Ash sighed, shaking his head. Why do I put up with you guys? Brock chuckled. Because you'd be lost without us. Ash turned toward the door, steeling himself for what was ahead. All right, he said. Let's do this.